and welcome to our webinar series, Surviving COVID-19. I hope you enjoyed the beautiful selection by Kenny G, The Moment. I am your host, Rekeema Turnbull. If you can hear me, please send a message in the chat or send a thumbs up. Surviving COVID-19 webinar series is geared to bring in informative and insightful sessions to you that can help you to get through COVID-19. COVID-19, as we all can agree, has presented unprecedented challenges. None of us have the answers, and leaders around the world are required to make decisions on a daily or better yet, hourly basis. One thing for certain is that I am not alone. You are not alone. We are not alone. We are in this together. Today's session, Embracing Technology, is especially for all persons that are interested in learning about fully utilizing technology and the security of it. Our presenter, Stevez Gomes, is well versed in this area, and he is ready. But before we let him speak, let's jump into a bit of housekeeping. Your audio will remain on mute with your video turned off throughout the presentation to allow a smooth and enjoyable presentation for all of us. Questions will be accepted at the end of the presentation, and the virtual floor will be open for discussions. To ask questions, you will be required to raise your hand to be acknowledged. The presentation will be available after via our YouTube channel. About HIREBVI. HIREBVI was founded in 2015. We are a locally owned and operated company. Our services include human resources and business solutions, recruitment services, human resources consultancy, payroll services, career expositions, training programs, document processing such as work permits, as well as job advertisement board. With the job board, you can advertise your job vacancies and it will satisfy the Labor Department requirement as it relates to work permits. I am your host, Rekeema Turnbull. I am dedicated to see individuals and teams as well as organizations succeed. I have over 15 years of combined experience in various industries. My educational background includes a Master of Business Administration in Global Management from Ashford University, a Bachelor of Arts in Accounting from UVI, a Level 7 Diploma in Strategic Management and Leadership from the Chartered Management Institute, a Six Sigma Green Belt certification from the Management and Strategy Institute, as well as a certification in Business Continuity Management from the Institute of Business. Currently, I serve as the Managing Director of HIREBVI and also the Finance, HR, and Admin Manager of CCT. A special thank you to Kloudfyre. Kloudfyre is a locally owned company specializing in cybersecurity and technology. Their services include computer.
I'm trying to get my head.
Sorry about that. Kloudfyre is a locally owned company specializing in cybersecurity and technology. Their services include computer incident response, cloud and infrastructure security, IT infrastructure design and management, as well as business continuity and data protection. Your presenter today is Stevez Gomes. Stevez has 13 years plus in technology security. He's an advocate for integrated technology and digital transformation in schools. He's a former IT engineer for Travelpedia of the Caribbean. He is a proud member of Information System and Security Association, ISSA of the BVI. He has a few other professional certifications, which include he is a network security expert of Fortinet, certified network associate of Cisco, and a certified solutions associate of Microsoft 365 and Windows servers. I now present to you your presenter, Stevez Gomes.
Good day, everyone on the call today. Rekeema, thanks for that introduction and the opportunity to speak today. I know it's a hard time around the world and locally here in the Virgin Islands, for those that have lost their jobs and under financial stress. But, somewhere through this darkness and crisis, I really believe that faith and prayers that this too shall pass. But I must take the time to extend my special thanks to the essential workers out here in the BVI, to the Family Support Network and the BVI Red Cross and everyone else who's out that's trying to get essentials to those in need. So hashtag BVI love. Just to get our hands really dirty, I just want to bring up an agenda of a quick plan on what we'll be covering today in today's webinar. Rekeema, sorry, can you switch from me? Yeah, thank you. So we'll be embracing the technology and talking about how technology can be utilized in the right way to evolve your business. And next, we'll actually review the current threat that attackers and cyber criminals are actually using to abuse or exploit COVID-19. And then we'll have a Q&A session. It's a really packed session. We've took a lot of information and try to condense it into this presentation and try to make it as clear as possible for those who with knowledge and those without. So moving on to the next slide, I want to share this quote to you because it's something that is very passionate, that I'm very passionate about. Noah Light said in around 1999 is that foundations have to be built for the coming generations, and some of us have to make the sacrifices. This goes back to where my advocacy for integrating technologies and digital transformation in schools, because in the BVI particularly, we looked at some of the foundations such as financial services, which in around 1984 was actually diversified and built for the generations to come. Mr. Cyril Rodney, his contribution towards the cruise and tourism of the island, these are benefits that are actually being reaped now. And this quote actually comes back to possibly using technology to become the next pillar. So this is something I strongly believe in, and I hope companies and individuals can actually think about the next generation of BVI landers, and thereafter. On our next slide, we will be talking about evolving. When something evolves, it changes or it develops over time. And this applies to business. If you want your business to remain competitive and to become relevant, it has to continually evolve. It has to change its ways. And something has been evident since the hurricanes of 2017 and this pandemic is that some business models need to change. But it is also important to understand that you cannot evolve unless there's a mindset change, or rather breaking out of old habits. And what I'm extremely proud about is that local businesses in the Virgin Islands have actually reached out and started embracing technology to meet a need. The need is that, there's social distancing. So some of their services, which rely on people coming to their stores to buy a service or goods, it could not be delivered. And I want to actually, shout out some examples of how businesses have actually evolved using the technology. Now, this is in a simplistic manner where, you have Walmart who really never embraced technology to the fact which they thought they could have actually offer online shopping. So, they quickly spun up an online portal. It initially had some challenges, but at the end of the day, they're utilizing the technology to take their business to the next level. On the far most left, where you have the delivery menu, this is another company called Hunger VI. It was a platform created by Mr. Philip Foy in Back Office VI, where they're now actually customizing delivery options for restaurants. So no longer are you able to go and sit and dine, at least not in the coming weeks or so, because of social distancing. So delivery would be a model where businesses can continue to operate, just they're evolve into a different era, to a different way of doing business. And there's a farmer's market where, farmers can actually take a picture of their goods and create forecasting of to sell online to consumers and other supermarkets. So no longer they have to sit in a corner and wait for consumers to come to get their goods. These are platforms that are actually coming alive here in the Virgin Islands because of this pandemic. And it actually illustrates how important is it to embrace technology. And going back to the fact that in order for you to get to the next level, you must be willing to accept change. If we look at our next slide, we will be able to, sorry, Rekeema, just go back one more for me, apologies. So if you look inside of a culture of a company, you must be able to understand what are some ways that you can embrace technology. And one of the first thing you must be able to consider is your goals. Where do you want to take your business? And if it looks as though the culture will prevent the business from enhancing, then there needs to be some mindset change. There may be people inside of the organization or the company that they're more traditional, so they may initially resist accepting change of integrating technology. And the integration of technology has to be designed properly from the get-go, because if it's not designed with security and scalability in mind, then you can actually end up in problems. And I'll give you some real-world example of some local instances where this has occurred. But away from the potential issues of not designing it properly, technology can help solve common issues. And the reason why a company would want to actually evolve or accept technology is to bring value, is to solve an immediate problem. We've seen that, there are cooking shows that is actually occurring over WhatsApp. The BVI launched their AirMade virtual healthcare application. The BVI government has started utilizing the GIS mapping, which never really had any much traction. It was something being done in the back end, but now they're using this mapping data to locate where residents live to be able to take essential food to it. The schools that adopted online classrooms to continue education, to keep those teachers employed and to ensure that the curriculum for the students are continuing. The supermarkets and the mini marts are actually launching their WhatsApp delivery processes where you can WhatsApp them your information and they would actually do the delivery of essential goods for you. And these are some examples of how it changes the course of the business, but adds values and solves an issue. Now, while these examples are great of how technology can evolve the business, again, going back to if it's not designed properly, it could lead to scalability, security, and data privacy issues, and even penalties in some instances. Without calling name or of any organization, I'm going to be very generic. In the BVI, they've been a few organizations of health in the health sector has launched telemedicine, where you can communicate with your doctor and you can exchange health information. While this is a very great initiative and it solves a really good problem, it was not really designed properly from the let-go because of the urgency to get something up and running. Security, data privacy was not in the decision-making process. So what you have is that using WhatsApp is a really great product. However, if in a medical instances, you are bounded by compliance and regulations to follow. This pandemic does not exempt any organization away from any compliance requirements. So using a medium such as WhatsApp to transfer your information, it's not really the best practice because you're using a medium that has questionable security risk and concerns around privacy. And that's just an example of how if a technology is not designed from the foundation, you can end up into scalability issues where it's not able to scale up on demand. Example like Walmart and some examples of some supermarkets where they're getting these influx of orders and their systems aren't able to cope with it because it was never designed. They never had the thought process behind, okay, what if we have 1,000 orders in one given day? How would our system respond? Do we have enough resources to deliver the service using this technology? And those are some examples why, again, it's important to have security and have people with knowledge about these areas be part of the conversation before you actually start utilizing that technology for purpose. And so we want to talk about, just to reinforce what everyone else may people on the call may know, and for those who may not know. And this slide is going to actually, the next two slides is actually going to prep the conversation for the subsequent slides. So remote access, we hear the term virtual private network, and I've just really put a definition of what it is. It's basically a secure network to get from point A to point B, and to ensure that data is safely transmitted. A remote access VPN specifically is designed to connect a device to a local resource within a corporate network. When you're traveling and you need to access your files and whatever, you would utilize a remote access VPN. This is very much different than the type of VPN that you use to mask your IP address location so you can watch your Netflix or get onto your US content. On the next slide, we will give an explanation of what multi-factor authentication is. Again, these two slides are going to prep the conversation for the subsequent slides. Multi-factor authentication is something that you know and something that you have. It's not a new technology. It's something that's been around for a long time. It's just now in a very different context, and it's becoming more advanced, and the security behind it is getting really, really great. So in terms of examples of what a multi-factor authenticator is, it's, for example, your bank card with a chip. You have your card, which is the physical device that you have, and you have a secret code that only you know. So it's, if you lose your card, then it's somewhat unusable to some extent, because there's still the need to input a PIN code to complete the payment transaction. But multi-factor authentication is used in the computer aspect, where you can actually, when you're connecting to a resource such as a VPN, or even your software as a service, such as your emails, you're connecting to your LinkedIn account, your Facebook account, your PayPal account. Multi-factor authenticator basically means that in the event that your username and password is breached, which is very likely, there is still a layer of protection that safeguards that identity. So without the something that you know, it's going to be really hard, not impossible, but it's going to be really hard for an attacker or someone with malicious intent to actually access those resources. Being a visual person, on the next slide, I had to put together a diagram for you to understand. This is just to illustrate what the basic remote access should look like. Now, I understand that it may look confusing to some people, but I believe it was important to drive the point across. On the left side, you have your regular computer network. You have your servers, you have a firewall appliance, and you have an internet provider. That's very basic. What COVID-19 has done, it is actually, while remote access is not new, it has now forced the entire workforce to be remote, to work from home. And this added the section on the right, where you have the users that is working remotely. They all have their internet providers in different locations. They have a computer, and in order to access the resources in their corporate network, such as files, applications, the most common and easiest way to do this is just utilizing the features built into the firewall called the VPN, or the virtual private network. And the red line illustrates the way, just visually what is the pathway that is connecting. It's connecting through the internet from different providers, but it's a direct pathway back to your corporate network. And there is the part where the public cloud provider. So, companies have moving away from their traditional email servers and web servers online. So you may have a public cloud provider, such as Microsoft 365, Google, Salesforce, etc., or even an application that you're hosting in one of those infrastructure platforms, such as Azure or AWS. But this is the best practices of ensuring that multi-factor authentication is actually enabled for those services, as well as the users that's connected. Because in the traditional way of security, everyone believes that being inside of the network is the most protective. But at the moment that user leaves the environment, they're no longer protected by that very expensive firewall that you've invested in. They may have an endpoint protection or an antivirus protection, but that is not as much protection as required when you're working away from the office, because there's different types of attack techniques that can be done to actually cause a breach or cause an incident to occur. So multi-factor authentication from the account perspective would be able to ensure that the username and password being inputted into that VPN tunnel is protected, as well as connecting to remote resources such as the public cloud infrastructure. This is the bare minimum that any small business should adopt, the very, very bare minimum. Utilizing a VPN or accessing data from a public internet source, such as your home, your coffee shop, or airport, without multi-factor authentication in these modern days, it is not a best practice. It is very risky. Going on to the next slide. Sorry, before I go, Rekeema, I'm just querying to see if there's any questions that we can actually cover before we move to the next slide.
I don't see any in the chat. If anyone want to ask a question at this time, you can raise your hand to be acknowledged. Proceed, Stevez.
All right, so moving on to the next slide. When developing a remote access, or you're now extending access outside of your organizations, you're now pushing your organization to accept more risk. The risk has been expanded dramatically because now your information can actually leave the device, the company device or the personal device at any time. So it is very important to ensure that the mechanisms and the protocols and the policies, the technology does not work by itself. It needs the people and it needs the processes in order to be successful. And these are some things that you can ask yourself before you enable remote access. Do you have the ability to locate and categorize your sensitive data? Do you know which users have access to your personal data in terms of credit card information for employees or clients? And are you able to see when those permissions are changed? Are you able to spot and detect threats and modern day threats and anomalies? And can you identify or know if a breach has occurred? How do you know that your data is being leaked? Do you know if your users are sticking a USB drives a USB device inside of their computer to exfiltrate data? So these are some things that you need to ask yourselves and confirm whether you have the controls in place before allowing access outside of the organizations, because physical security is one aspect where users, they may be intimidated because the boss is in the office or other employees to actually copy or print off data. But by utilizing or having these policies and security controls in place, you're now able to ensure that by enabling remote access, your data is secure. There are some things to this. Now, with the surge where companies have been so eager to enable remote access because of short notices from government regarding the lockdown, what we've seen is that companies are now looking to things like TeamViewer, FreeSUS, GoToMyPC, SplashStop, and a few other of the remote access services that are out there that is not entirely built around security and privacy. And what you're opening yourself up to is, again, a great amount of risk, because with TeamViewer, for example, users have the ability to transfer files within the session. And while there's minimal data being logged about it, if it's not set up properly, then you kind of lose that evidence of what type of files is being copied in that file transfer. There's remote printing, where a user may have a printer at home and they have a company file with all of the beneficiary owners for any particular incorporated company. They can click a remote print, and that data actually goes to their personal printer that's attached to their computer at home. So without the right controls and people and processes behind this, enabling remote access without really thinking it through and having security in the forefront, you're actually opening your businesses to a lot of risk. Because remember, your data is your business, and this data security is a really, really important topic, because we see a lot of hack and leak attempts of operations from cyber criminals, where their goal is actually to just leak the information. Your information is very, very, it's worth a lot of money. Not that you may think, but if I have information about your customers, it allows me now to target or to do a buffalo jump or a buffalo overflow, where I now have the amount of information about the number of people that I can sell on the dark web. And we will show you examples of how this is practical in subsequent slides. But this is just to basically ask yourself these questions. Do you have the necessary in place to protect your data when that employee starts working from home? Or, you know, can you track their activity, not from a productivity standpoint mainly, but, you know, can you track and see what files are they working on? Have they transferred any files across the remote access tool that they're using, or even the VPN? But it's just something to think about. Going on to our next slide, I think this is going to be a really fun section, exploiting COVID-19. All right, so cyber criminals are unfortunately using this pandemic for commercial gain. They're actively targeting individuals and small to medium-sized businesses. Even the larger ones are being attacked at the moment. And they're using the coronavirus-themed phishing emails or malicious applications and masquerading themselves as trusted entities. Now, they really have a common goal. It's consistent with espionage and hack and leak operations. They want to get into your organization, get what they need, enable persistence to remain there, and, you know, continually leak information and sell it on the dark web. And in some cases, use that information to target others, you know, because in the context of a supply chain attack, you as the customer being breached may not be the real target of it, but you may be a printer company or an IT services company or a water delivery company that has access to an organization that they're trying to reach. And by hacking you and getting information such about the company that they're trying to, the ultimate target, your supply chain to that company, it becomes a supply chain attack. We've seen where IT service providers, they often boast about security, but their internal practices have not been audited. And they store clients' data in Excel sheets or on password managers that haven't met compliance for storage. And what you see is that once the MSP or the IT service provider has been hacked, that information about customers, you know, that's a master key. So they have access to all of their customers. So it's important now to also vet the providers that you do business with to ensure that they themselves are protected. Because not because someone is providing IT services mean they know all or their house is so super clean. You know, this is the flaw that these attackers are preying on, is that IT service providers are doing a really terrible job in their own housekeeping to protect the information about their clients. So in terms of phishing, you know, just to reiterate, for those, again, who may not know what phishing is really a process of attempting to acquire sensitive information, such as usernames and password, even payment details, by masquerading as trusted entity. You may receive an email. There's different techniques to the phishing. Some of the techniques we will cover, but really an example of it is that you may receive an email to say, you know, we've caught you watching porn, and you need to transfer this money, or we're going to release that video to all of your contacts. That's a really juvenile level phishing. That's basically throwing a bait out there and hoping someone will be scared enough and panic to actually send payments to their cryptocurrency address that they provided. But the more advanced one are like business email compromise, which we will actually go through. But business email compromise and spearphishing are the ones that are really, that what you really need to be careful about. Because in the case of business email compromise, the accountant may receive an email from the boss saying, you know, Dorothy, please transfer $450,000 to this account for me. We need it for this order. And Dorothy says, okay, I checked the from address. It looks like my boss. Okay. She's not even going to verify with her boss the amount or anything like that. She's going to go ahead and transfer this money. Now, factual data is that this actually occurred recently with the Shark Tank host Barbara, where one of her employees actually received an email about some work that she's doing in a different country and asked for a wire transfer. And the employee did the transfer without even verifying with Barbara whether that was legitimate. And in the BVI, there have been some known cases where business email compromise, or CEO fraud, as they call it, has taken a toll. What they do is that in order to really convince you, they first of all spoof the domain. So to pretend that the email is actually coming from the same domain as yourself, which is very easy to do if you do not have things like DKIM or DMARC enabled on your domain to protect these aspects. But what's interesting is that sometimes they may hack a contact, someone that you're conversing with. They learn and they interpret the way that you communicate, the language, then how you type, your spelling, your grammar. They learn all of this. They study the communications for a while, and then they take a thread of emails that could be used as maybe a way to fool or to provide extra proof that this person is, I'm really who I am, because I'm now copying a thread of emails that maybe no one else should have known about, and replying and said, you know what, Phil, we had the situation, and we need this transfer now. And you look at the history, you see that it's coming from the from address looks real, and you're actually going to do through it. There was a case where we worked with the German police in the local BVI to actually provide the evidence of a CEO fraud that was going on for 6 months. They were replying to emails back and forth for 6 months, and it was really amazing. Now, some data was provided, some confidential data, but it just goes to show that this is a real thing. In the terms of the techniques for phishing, we talked about the spearphishing, which is more of a targeted attack. Phishing is more broad. It doesn't have a target. You're hoping someone is going to bite. But spearphishing is once they've profiled you and determined that you are going to be the absolute target, that I'm going to get value by attacking your organization, they are actually going to comprise a special crafty email, or using a different forms, maybe smishing using SMS or voicemails to attempt you to convince that they are trustworthy. We're looking at an example here from Flow. This is a really recent example where our systems intercepted a really advanced phishing email. Now, one thing to note about this is that this is not a malicious link. Going to this website does not trigger anything malicious. It is a simple website that is secured by an SSL certificate. In the past, everyone was told, look for that green lock or look for the lock on the page. Once it's there, hey, I trust it. But on the next slide, it shows that this is not actually real. And you cannot base the trustworthiness of a website based on having a lock, because it's so easy to get a certificate to give you that lock on the URL. But look into this closely. I believe this was created by a really juvenile cyber criminal, someone that's maybe an hobbyist, because it's really poorly executed. First of all, in the login prompt, the email originated saying that your account, a login was detected on your iOS device. Click here to update your password. It takes you to this link, and it's more of an image link, and the only thing that actually works there is the sign in button, the email address field, and the password field. The stay sign in is just a still image. It doesn't do any action. The forget password doesn't do any action. But then, you type in your password and you realize that, okay, the password isn't actually being masked. It's not hidden, which, that's a red flag. Even a legitimate service, if you're doing that and the password is not hidden, just get out, get away from that. But then on the security side, with the URL, they actually try to copy as close as possible what the actual Flow login is, because they're using the CNW, mails.com, which they registered a domain, and then there's the lock in front of it. The lock shows that basically, they were issued a SSL certificate, so if you're using Google Chrome or Firefox, it was not get flagged as an insecure site. And if you look at the top, you see in the certificate details, you see the issuer's Kloudfyre security. Right on the field issue there. It's basically our SSL proxy inspection, and actually we're able to dive down deeper into this threat to understand how they fingerprint their SSL certificate and how they're actually, the servers that they're connecting from. But it just gives you an example that relying on a well-branded site and an SSL certificate is not secure. You must trust but always verify. If you see an email from Flow or requesting access, or anyone that is requesting immediate action and out of normal action, trust it, but verify. So you reach out to Flow or any other entity and validate it. Okay, did you send me this email? What is this about? So these are some idea that, of where you have to be very cautious, because these guys are getting very crafty. They're very, very advanced. Even myself have to be very cautious about some of the sites that I click on, because they do a really, really good job to fool you. And without the right detection systems and controls in place, you could be a victim of phishing. So we just want to jump on. I know we're just at 40 minutes in right now, and we're just going to move up to showing you some real world examples of what type of data that criminals can have. So we look at the map diagram here. So just like Google, where you can query your searches, in the cybersecurity world, there are tools that are available to allow security professionals and even the bad guys to see everything that has a connection to the internet. Now, this is don't be scared about this. This is what you call using data that is readily available. But I want you to be cautious about it, and I want you to listen very carefully about this section, because it could cause some mindset of uneasiness. But basically what I'm using here, I'm using a simple tool to query the country Virgin Islands by the country code VG. I'm looking for everything in the British Virgin Islands that is hosting a web service. You can see that query in the top mark. And it pointed out to me that these are the top services, and the organizations below references in, this is not a bad data by the numbers being higher or lower. It just means that there are more subscribers using CCT that are hosting some type of service or some type of web application service, why they showed up into that list. But this is how easy it is to find information. Everything that you connect to the internet, those Ring doorbells, your Nest cameras, if you want your camera to access, to view your cameras when you're remotely away from your location, it has to connect to the internet. And once it connects to the internet and security is not around that implementation of that service, you're going to be exposing your system. You're going to expose yourself. You're going to expose your business, your data to the entire world. On the next slide, this is an example of the BVI. Now, what this one does, it gives you thumbnail view based on all of the servers that's in the British Virgin Islands or registered in the British Virgin Islands. What we found is that some of these are actually not physically in the Virgin Islands, but they were able to obtain an IP address from a provider or ARIN that has a ASN that points or belongs to the Virgin Islands. So out of that 300 entries, some of them I can guarantee you are not from the BVI from a physical aspect. But these on the front screen are from the BVI, and it just goes to show how poor implementation of technology, what it can lead to. This is servers and I believe two workstations that are accessible over the internet because they've enabled remote desktop. And what you have is that out of this list, I can see that there's 3 of them that is missing security updates. They're going to be my first target because they're missing some kind of critical patches. But then you look at, there's 3 others that are no longer supported by Microsoft. You see a Server 2003 that's just floating on the internet, and the only thing that's protecting it is a username and password. And Server 2003 was specifically vulnerable to a BlueKeep vulnerability back in June 2019, as well as Server 2008. But this goes to shows that, if you don't secure your systems, this is what any juvenile attacker and advanced attacker and anyone that's in the field of cybersecurity that is knowledgeable can see. We've seen webcams, we can see Tesla systems, we can see anything that you have unprotected. Those wireless modems that you have from your ISPs with a default password from home, they're floating on the internet. Once it has an IP address, it's there. It can be intercepted. It can be, there's so much that can be done about it, and it's just to raise awareness by showing you this image and showing you the previous slide that the threat is real. This is real. This isn't no snake oil or FUD marketing where you use fear and dimension to actually take over a point. This is actual data. This is what occurs in the British Virgin Islands right now. If we look at the next slide, we're going to look. This is data that we've grabbed up using a service that queries the dark web. The dark web, just for reference, it's not a fictional fairy tale place. It is an actual place on the internet where criminals, more juvenile criminals, I would say, use to sell information. The more advanced criminals do use it, but they're more very cautious and they're harder to detect, and they won't actually put this information out like this. They will sell it to specific people. But this is using a mail service that's available here in the British Virgin Islands, and we queried it. And we see that there's 2,859 leaks for that domain itself. And then you see from 2019 all the way back to 2012, there has been an enormous amount of breaches to this domain. If you look in the numbers highlighted in yellow, you would see, the amount of the leaks and the year that it occurred. Now, why this is important? People may ask, okay, how do these guys get my email address? How do they know that, this is my email or whatever? This is how they know. They breach sites such as, iMesh, Adobe, LinkedIn, and because some of these sites that you use, like Facebook and TikTok, shares your information with third-party organizations, and maybe the third parties get breached, your email address, your passwords, your IP addresses, your usernames, your password hints gets put out there in the dark web. So these attackers compile lists and are able to now use this information and send mass phishing emails to everyone. So this is really an example of how an attacker can actually get, your email address if you haven't explicitly shared it with anyone. Going on, this is just an example of what an actual COVID-19 smishing attack. Smishing is just SMS or text phishing, where they're sending you a text, hoping that you click on the link. And by clicking on the link, majority of the times, it's right now it's more of trying to get credentials versus performing any malicious intent, because they know people have put in protections in place, so to block most of these domains. But majority of them are just to try to get information. In this case, it's a credit card information they're trying to get. This is just an example of, they're abusing the lack or the shortage of personal protective equipment. Right. So what I wanted to do is that, people may have questions about, small businesses with limited budgets, small businesses who may not have the expertise or whatever to protect themselves in the BVI. And we've worked really, really, really hard to put this together for this webinar. We are a Fortinet preferred partner for the Virgin Islands. As such, we have exclusive benefits and exclusive access to the Fortinet team to help create an opportunity for for discounts or opportunities to help educate people. Most recently, Fortinet has donated over $20,000 worth in discounts to a local K-12 organization that we're trying to help to protect. And so their interest into into the Virgin Islands is really high, and we're really proud to be affiliated with Fortinet. So they've put together a package, more so on the left-hand side, which we're passing on to any small businesses that are willing to get maybe just up their security profile or the control mechanisms. And on the right, these are the services that we ourselves are providing to help small businesses through the COVID-19. So on the Fortinet side, they're providing a firewall appliance. Fortinet, for those who don't know, is one of the top 4 leaders in the next generation firewall appliances around the world. They're offering a FortiClient, which is their endpoint security system, which allows for the VPN client back to their firewall, and their FortiToken, which is the multi-factor authentication. They provide this package, and what we're doing is giving you free installation, configuration, and documentation until the end of this year. That price of $18.97 includes everything on the Fortinet as well as everything under the additional benefits. So it's one package for small businesses that are may lack the resources to get more secure. Apart from that, I'm always available for any free advice. I love to share the information that I have. This is just some regular contact information and for you to get me. I kind of omitted the phone number because I know that this webinar is going to be on a particularly open space on the internet, and I don't really want to be a victim of smishing, but we can communicate privately the phone number to get in touch, but email remains the preferred method. At the moment, we are working with the Carnegie Mellon University to attain the certification for using their trademark of the Computer Emergency Response Team. We're almost completing that process, and once we are complete with that process, we'll be able to provide additional expertise and coverage for the Virgin Islands under a national responsibility, where we can actually be the main source for reporting breaches in accordance with the FSC and the police force. But these are things that are almost complete and are still in the making. But at the moment, if there is an email that you're really not sure about, but it doesn't contain any personal information that you're willing and ask, you can submit these to us to that email address. And we're able to provide an analysis on that. Most of the cases, we may not get back to you depending on the type of threats it is, but it is a way that we can actually vet some of these emails for you. And important to note that the financial crimes and cyber crimes should always firstly be reported to the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force. And from their policies and processes, they have themselves, and for escalation to third parties for more forensic ability. And with that, I want to thank you guys so much for listening. I hope somewhere it was really informative. There was just too much of content. We couldn't pack everything inside of here for you. But if there's any questions or that we can answer, or if you need to get in touch offline with me, please let us know now.
Thank you so much for that, Stevez. That was a very informative and insightful session. It was a lot of information. I know we both tried our best to keep it as condensed as possible and still informative at the same time. We know that it was a lot that you guys had to listen to in the 1 hour space. If you have any questions at this time, you can raise your hand. Please don't all rush to the mic at the same time. You can raise your hand and you will be acknowledged. If you're a bit timid, you can also send me a private message in the chat and I'll ask a question on your behalf. But Stevez, I have a few questions already on the floor. And one of the questions is, recently, I received emails in my junk mail indicating that the individual had access to the password of my laptop. They provided the password, and they later threatened to post or make my life difficult. Given the increasing need to do confidential work on personal computers during this COVID-19 times, what is the best way to protect yourself from hacking attempts and attempts that steal information or scandalize persons? One second, I think you're on mute.
All right, thank you. So those type of emails are, I would say, quite common. They're sextortion or webcam scam based, where they're just generically phishing for you, and they would put information to make you scared and try to serve up information that they're really after. Those emails, in my opinion, can be safely ignored because there's no real threat to that information. They just got your email address and they're trying something. Provided that there's no links or there's no attachments in the emails, in my opinion, you can safely ignore those emails. In terms of protecting yourself, it comes with a a sort of a becoming a human firewall. You have all of these technologies in place, but you yourself just needs to adopt a mentality. In the cybersecurity world, there's a terminology called zero trust. You trust something, you trust there's your boss, but you always verify. And then the second part to that would be to ensure that you have the more modern and advanced protections for your businesses and your data, to ensure that when these emails do come through, they're stopped at maybe the email filter layer or a spam filter layer or phishing service that you utilize, so it doesn't actually reach to your inbox. So it's a bit of a technology aspect, but there's the human aspect where you have to become the human firewall.
Thank you for that. The other question is, if there was a toolkit of skills that a person should possess in order to be excellent at remote working, what will those skills be?
It kind of depends on whether you're coming at it from a productivity or a productivity angle or a security angle. But there's not really any playbook to say how are you able to effectively work remotely. And in my opinion, if there's any doubt towards that, you should reach out to someone who's more knowledgeable in that area, that may be able to give you free good advice, or even help you get services to help you set this up and to understand the value that it is going to bring to your organization. Because at the end of the day, the whole goal of remote access is to Is there any more questions, Rekeema?
Yes, there's another question. One participant is asking, what are these cyber security laws in the BVI, and where can one find the laws?
The security laws, I would say there are legislations that most recently there have been updates to it, and I think government would be pretty much the best source of information right now in terms of those legislations, which is the Cybercrime Act, and they recently did an e-legislation, and e-government legislation. But in terms of laws, some of these compliance and these regulations are internationally based. For example, GDPR. GDPR, it doesn't matter where in the world you are. Once you're a European Union citizen, you're affected by GDPR. Health information, it doesn't really matter where in the world you are. HIPAA applies to ensuring that the safeguard of medical information. This applies to any medical facility operating anywhere. So there are some international laws, and there's compliancy also, such as PCI DSS, for ensuring that payment records or payment data is secured. And in the security aspect, there's a lot of there's like the cybersecurity framework, and there's a lot of compliancy towards that. They're international based. The BVI is now catching up to the international world, and I can see data protection and so forth is actually going to be something expanded upon. There is legislation in place right now with the updated version of it, but it's going to be expanded over time because, again, this is a moving target.
Sounds good. And the last question that I have is, suppose an individual wish to prepare themselves to teach or coach others to work remotely, or to become a technology specialist who helps small businesses or average individuals to resolve computer issues. What would be the best way to retrain and become qualified in this area?
Okay. So what I can think about, there's tons of resources that is available on the internet. there's a lot of training sites like Udemy, even YouTube, and there's Pluralsight, and there's a few other services that enables one to actually start getting familiarized with themselves with these remote access, security, IT service management. But the biggest ingredient of it all is going to be your dedication and your desire to learn to do these things. And if there's doubt, there's mentorships, there's individuals that would be willing to share their knowledge with you. I, for myself, I love sharing knowledge. All of it wasn't obtained by myself. People mentored me and taught me and passed on knowledge. So, it's a cycle. And, there's a lot of resources out there for one that wants to learn more about becoming a technology specialist.
Thank you so much for that, Stevez. And as we conclude, I'd like to thank everyone for joining the call. But before we leave, I'd like to share with you that you can download HIREBVI'S app. It is in your Google Play Store or your Apple App Store. It is free of cost. You can get that app free of cost today. There we share information, we share job postings as well, and any information relating to HIREBVI. At this point, we conclude. Thank you for tuning in. You can stay connected with us following us at Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at HIREBVI, or telephone number 284-442-4473, or email info@HIREBVI, or we're on the web at hirebvi.com. Remember, guys, to stay safe and happy Friday. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.